Welcome to this edition of Morgan He Asked For podcast. Trev and I joining you Wednesday evening, April 30th. It is amazing that we're already getting ready to flip the calendar to May. I feel like this year so far has gone super fast. The draft is over. School's a month from being done. Time's flying, in my opinion. It could slow down a little bit. I think I heard we're 100 days from like football kickoffs and 100 days from the state fair. And it's almost like we haven't even started summer yet, but people are already starting to plan for the fall. And that makes it a little sad because summer is just a great time to enjoy life.
Yeah, it does seem like the year's going fast. Hey, are you going to take 100 men or one gorilla?
Oh, yeah, that's that. We got to have that. Well, so overall, I think the 100 men would get them, and I think here is why. You're gonna sacrifice some people. The question is, what number are you gonna be? If you're gonna be the first guy, you're dead meat. I mean, he's gonna like just break your head in half. But if you're the 75th guy, he's tired, and I think you got a chance. But if you're number 1 through 25, you're dead.
I think if you're 1 through 100, you're dead. I don't want.
Well, that could be.
I take the gorilla. I don't know. I mean, I think if somebody had a gun to my head and said, "Hey, you got to go fight this gorilla, or we'll shoot you," you're dead. I think I'd just take the bullet. I want no piece of that thing.
Oh, I don't know. Me too. I want no part.
If you give me 100 men and 2 grizzly bears, and let the bears go first, then maybe. But no, I got to go with the gorilla here. I'm on the side of Team Gorilla on this one.
Yeah, overall, yes. But I do think just if it really happened, because obviously you can't put 100 people on the grill at one time. There is going to be some he's going to get tired because that's just nature. But
maybe.
But yeah, he's it's not going to be good for most of the men. If not all the men, it could be bad.
They're going to get thrown around like rag dolls, literally. And someone said, well, what if you get 100 motivated men? I don't care how motivated you are. That thing starts going crazy. You're done. So I'm on, like I said, I'm on Team Gorilla here.
Yeah. I'm going to be Team Gorilla too, but I do think there's a little bit of an argument that, if the fight lasts a half hour, it'd be tough for the gorilla.
Maybe. Yeah. If you got to go, hopefully you're number 100.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you're number 1 through 25, you have zero chance. Zero. Maybe I bet 1 through 50, zero chance.
A massacre is what it'd be.
I mean, you just think those guys, you go to the zoo and you watch them just sitting there eating lettuce or whatever they're doing, just hating life. If you gave them motivation, just how bad they could rip just everything up.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a pretty sight. So yeah, that's something that's obviously been going all over social media. Seems like everybody's talking about. So I had to see what side you were on for this one.
Yeah, Team Gorilla, and especially if it was 100 me's, we'd die in a hurry.
Yeah, no kidding. I'd want no part of it.
All right, we're going to recap the draft here. That's going to be the main topic. Let's just go ahead because I think it just came out today. I don't know how to say his name, but the Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator son prank called Shedeur Sanders, and he's admitted it. He's apologized, everything. Fined him $100,000 and the Falcons $250,000. Correct?
Yeah, they got a fine. There was some thoughts. Some people thought they should be docked a draft pick. I didn't think that happened. I figured a fine about this amount would be appropriate. We did prank phone calls in high school all the time, but of course those were like to 1-800 numbers to Bowflex and some of those other ones, those infomercials that were always going on. It wasn't during someone's draft night, but it was a dumb moment for the kid or a couple, because it sounds like he may have called some other players, but Shedeur Sanders didn't die here. So I think a fine to the team and to the defensive coordinator is probably appropriate.
So if you're the Falcons, do you make him pay the whole $350,000?
You might. I'm sure the league sat down and had a conversation. They don't want people's phone numbers or any type of information getting out. The NFL is very secretive about certain things, and it was a bad look overall. But of course, in today's society, everybody's got to go and become famous on social media, TikTok, whatever the videos might be. So, yeah, it was a dumb move by the kid. He put out an apology. Now he's getting ridiculed online, which he deserves. So, kind of an eye for an eye there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a life lesson. You would think in your own home, if your iPad doesn't get locked screen right away, it's not a big deal. But you can see how, and I do think Shedeur Sanders handled it as well as he could have. I mean, obviously, he probably wasn't super happy at the moment, but he didn't go crazy. He didn't go blaming people. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody's human, and it is what it is.
Shedeur handled it really well, considering everything that happened to him on draft night, the second night, and then into day 3. So
Right.
Shedeur and his family handled that really well. What they didn't handle well was the pre-draft process. It ended up costing them. You know, I text you that 93 or over 1,500 mock drafts are monitored by a mock draft database by all the people on NFL.com, ESPN, Sports Illustrated, you name it. 93% had Shedeur as a first-round pick, and most of the remaining 7% had him early second. So this was one where the media, some of the insiders, and groupthink was just off on this one. And it was, you know, he and his dad didn't take the pre-draft process seriously. They made a mockery out of it.
When he went to the combine, correct? And just didn't do all this stuff. Or am I wrong in that?
Yeah, he was at the combine. He went to some other events. And the thing is when the college football season ends, from the day you play your last game until draft, it's all one long interview process. And he conducted himself like he was a top 5 pick or a surefire first-round pick. That's a lot of his fault. It's a lot of Deion's fault also. And you saw rumors come out, specifically with the Giants, that they put an install in. Shedeur didn't study. Brian Daboll called him out in the meeting, and Shedeur got defensive about it. And we've all done it. Everybody has. You don't study for a test in high school or college, or you don't prep for an interview or whatever it might be. You wing it. Usually the results aren't positive. It ends up costing you. And that's what happened to Shedeur. It's just a little bit different because millions of dollars are on the line for this. And, you know, if you put yourself, think about Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, they have very little time to mess around. They're on the hot seat as much as anybody. And those guys, there's a real good chance that they're never given a head coaching job or a GM job in the NFL again if they're fired. So they have very little time for nonsense. I would guess they probably went into the process hopeful that Shedeur could be the guy. And all these teams, eventually there's a breaking point where Shedeur leaves the room or they get off the team's call, whatever it might be. And they probably all looked at each other and they said, we got to cross them off the list. We've got 20 other quarterbacks to evaluate. We've got 300 other players total to evaluate. They're not spending 10 hours a day for 90 days only evaluating Shedeur, even though that's what ESPN wants you to believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's – and I think Cam Ward was the exact opposite. And some of it is just the way, you know, Cam Ward started at Incarnate Word and then worked his way up. So he didn't come out with you know, his dad's not Deion Sanders, which that's no one's fault. I mean, that's not Shedeur's fault either. That's just his life. And wasn't, you know, he had to earn his way up from the start. And, you know, there was interviews and when they were together that Ward doesn't have really any hobbies. It's football. And Shedeur wants to talk about rapping and all the other things that he does because he doesn't, you know, if football doesn't work for Shedeur, he's going to be okay in life. That's what he was given. Cam Ward, his chance to make it and to be someone and to help his family for generations is him. So he's, from everything you've seen, now it doesn't mean it's going to work out, but he's done everything in his power to set himself up to be the number 1 pick and to be as successful as he can up until this point.
Yeah, you know, as Pat McAfee calls it, it's the men's league. This isn't the National TikTok League. This isn't the Instagram Association. It's the NFL. There's been thousands of players before Shedeur. There'll be thousands after. And these teams, they don't have a whole lot of time for messing around. There's guys with red flags that got drafted. We'll talk about some of them. But when you're going in through the interview process, you at least got to pretend to be buttoned up or pretend to care. And there's rumors that he made people feel small. He was indifferent about a lot of stuff, just assumed that he was going to be a first-round pick. And I told you my comparison to him was kind of a mix of Tyrod Taylor and Jared Goff. Well, if you look, Jared Goff was a number 1 overall pick. I think Tyrod Taylor was pick number 180. So if you combine them, it's about pick 91 roughly, right? I think Shedeur went 144, whatever it was. I would assume there was teams that probably had him at a second or a third round grade that would have taken him. But then when you add in, on top of everything, not being prepared, really just acting like a jackass in these interviews, that's what happens. And I don't know if Jimmy, speaking of the Browns too, I think it was a Jimmy Haslam pick. I don't know if he steps in and makes the Browns take Shedeur Sanders. He probably keeps falling quite a ways.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Browns, I mean, there was serious discussions before the draft that they were going to take him at number 2. And they got him in the 5th round. So if you want to think the Browns themselves, they might have got a great deal if he turns out to be any type of quarterback or can lead anybody and turn it around.
Yeah, it could end up being a steal. I mean, there's 2 differences. ESPN, all the insiders, myself, everybody was wrong. Now, of course, Stephen A. Smith and the people on ESPN are never going to admit that. They're going to blame it on other things, which is just silly. It's a dishonest conversation that they're having. Groupthink, like I said, got it wrong this time. 93% of mock drafts had him as a first rounder. The NFL teams told you differently. You got to take your interview seriously, even if you're Shedeur Sanders. You can't go making people feel small, acting like an idiot. You got to be prepared. And he's not talented enough to half-ass it. I mean, and that's what he did, and it cost him.
You know, his dad had that swagger, maybe did things a little unconventionally, but he was talented and he was a proven commodity. There was no questions on whether he'd be a good football player. And so again, as you talked about it a minute or so ago, there's people with red flags. They don't care. They'll draft you because the NFL teams want to win. But with him, and I heard it compared to Kaepernick and Tebow, when it got to the stage in their careers where they were only going to fight for the backup spot, when you're the backup quarterback, you can't be a distraction. You can't be trying to be the show. If you're the starter and you're winning, they'll put up with it. But you can't be the backup and be the guy that the media wants to talk to, or you're the one on social media putting things out when you're the backup quarterback. So the Browns got to make a decision. Are they willing to put up with that for him to be the backup or give him a shot? Or are they just going to cut him here with being a 5th round pick? They don't owe him anything. They can cut him tomorrow.
You don't want your backup quarterback to be a distraction, just like you said. That's a really good point. And for the Browns, yeah, they have 5 quarterbacks right now. One of the quarterbacks can't play this season. Watson's out for the year with the Achilles, so they got 4. They could put one on practice squad and carry 3 during the season because obviously Watson's not going to dress. So, where he was drafted and how he does the NFL are 2 separate conversations. So he got drafted way later than everybody expected. It happens. It's the biggest slide in NFL history for a name this big. It's the one where the masses were completely wrong. There's been guys that have slid over the years that were smaller names that the average person probably wouldn't even recognize. But this is the biggest slide in history. Just like you said, I mean, I expected him to go early day 2, and when he didn't, that's when I started to wonder how far can it go into the 5th round. And yeah, I mean, for the Browns, it is going to be tough though, because you only get a certain amount of reps in practice. And the ones probably get 70%. The 2s probably get 20%, and then the 3s get 10%. I mean, and that might not be exact, but it's something along those lines. So Shedeur's going to have to prove himself. He definitely is probably more talented than some of the guys they have on the roster, but we'll see if this humbles him and if he's serious. I think he's a hard worker and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that's going to be a problem in the NFL, but teams probably saw it that way of how he conducted himself in interviews. Like, hey, bud, you haven't made it yet. as I said, there's been thousands of players before him. There'll be thousands after. These coaches and GMs in the NFL, they've seen it all. And this is not a Peyton Manning or a Caleb Williams situation where maybe they would overlook some stuff. He's just not talented enough to overlook some of those pre-draft flaws.
Yeah, it's just one of those. NFL stands for not for long. And we're going to see how long it is for him. If he can figure it out, I think he needs to humble himself a little bit, go sit in the meeting room. Joe Flacco is a proven pro. He's won a Super Bowl. He knows how to play quarterback in the NFL. He's not the most talented guy, but he's made a heck of a career for himself. And he needs to sit behind there and learn from him. And his goal should be to be the backup quarterback to Joe Flacco and learn this year. I mean, that as a 5th-round draft pick, that's best case scenario. And then in the realistic world, Joe Flacco is going to get hurt because that's what happens in the NFL. And then when it's your time, you step up and hopefully you take advantage of it.
Yeah, my guess would be Joe Flacco wins the job, and then it's going to be Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, or Shedeur fighting for that number 2 spot. And the Browns I think they have the lowest over-under win total going into the season. So if the season doesn't go as planned, which is likely, there's going to be pressure if Shedeur does win the number 2 job for Shedeur to play this year, because Jimmy Haslam is going to go. That was his call for them to draft him. He was only 50 picks behind Dylan Gabriel, I think it was. So that's an owner pick right there. And if Joe Flacco struggles, there's going to be pressure to get Sanders in there sooner than later.
Yeah, I agree. And, if he gets his opportunity, if he earns that opportunity and he takes advantage of it, he may end up with a very long, productive NFL career. I mean, you just look at what happened to Brock Purdy. He got a chance, took advantage of it. Now the only discussion is his contract going to have a 4 in front of it per year or a 5 in front of it per year?
There's plenty of guys that have been drafted after the first round, whether you're pick 1 like a Peyton Manning, the last pick of the draft like Brock Purdy. We've seen Jamarcus Russell's, Ryan Leafs. I mean, the NFL has seen it all. So it's going to be up to Shedeur and Shedeur only. His dad can't save him this time, as we saw in the draft. So as you said, we'll see if he humbles himself. If he goes in and works hard, I think he's got the talent to win the number 2 spot and eventually play. But we'll see. I mean, the NFL told us it wasn't collusion or anything like that. We saw the other quarterbacks that were taken. So that's just a silly conversation that some people are having.
Yeah.
This is just a classic case that the media got it wrong. Everybody got it wrong. And it doesn't happen very often, at least to this extent. But it seems like a lot of people in the media are just they're terrified to admit that they were wrong.
Yeah, and then I almost feel bad for a lot of people that did get drafted, because it seemed I didn't watch the entire draft. I didn't watch it, just nonstop. But when I was watching it, it was draft pick number 127, Johnny Smith from Oregon going to Carolina. Oh, in the next 5 picks, there's 2 spots for Sanders to go, or some popular quarterbacks are coming up, probably going to get – I mean, it just – every 5 picks, it was just they were just promoting Sanders. And I almost feel bad for everybody else in the draft because their time probably wasn't given to them as it should have been.
Cam Ward has to be the least talked about number 1 pick of all time, because not only that, right after he was taken, we had the big trade, which sort of came out of nowhere, and then that overtook it. And then it was the Sanders slide. I mean, Mel Kiper, how we talked about last week, Mel Kiper, he had an interesting weekend, we'll say the least. Yeah. You could tell the guys on set with him they were tired of Mel Kiper. And that was after day 1, and they had 2 more days with him. So I love Mel. He's entertaining. We'll see if he's right about Shedeur or not. I mean, time will tell. But Mel's not scared to put his name on things and quarterbacks on this. I mean,
he lost his mind. Yeah.
He did lose his mind. So I was joking with somebody. I said, yeah, Mel might have to find a different network to work for next year, because it was a little bit of a meltdown. But you're right, it did kind of take from the draft, especially from Cam Ward and some others, where it was just the Sanders talk for 5 rounds, right? All 3 days. I mean, that's all anybody wanted to talk about. So there was plenty of other players taken, but the Sanders fall, like I said, this is the most prolific and biggest fall that we've ever seen in the NFL draft.
Continuing with the draft, I want to talk the Iowa State receivers. Higgins went second pick in the second round, so almost a first round pick. And that was about where a lot of people thought, 30 to 40. If it got to the right team and everything happened, it might have been a late first round, but it was early second. And then Jalen Knoll goes to Houston as well. Obviously, they're not the same receiver. They're not going to play the same position. So it's not like they're going to be battling for roster spots against each other. The interesting part is it could cost another former Cyclone a job, though, in Xavier Hutchinson, because Higgins and Hutchinson do play the same position. And they've got Nico Collins, Higgins was the comparison of. You're not going to have three guys in that same spot. But as of right now, three guys from Iowa State in the Texans receiver room, and that's pretty interesting to see.
The Houston Cyclones.
Yeah, kind of like the Jets had a couple, has that right now as well. Is Lazard still with the Jets officially, or has he been released? I mean, I know he's a Aaron Rodgers guy, so.
I believe he reworked his deal to stay with the Jets. I mean, you got the Houston Cyclones and the Pittsburgh Hawkeyes right now after the draft. So, yeah, there were some people that were confused with the Texans taking both Iowa State receivers, but as we know, they're two totally different types of receivers. So that kind of confused some people, but that was interesting. Whoever this, and then Luke Lachey went to the Texans in the 7th round. So whoever their scouts are must have spent a lot of time in the state of Iowa.
Yeah, and Noel can also help on special teams as a kick and punt returner if needed. I don't know what the Texans have, but he can do that as well. He doesn't just have to be a receiver.
Yeah, and then for Higgins, we talked about him being potentially a sort of a surprise first-round pick. I think when the betting odds started, he was 30 or 40 to 1 to go in the first round, and then the night of the draft, he was all the way down, I think, to plus 650 to be a first-round pick. And I sent you a text. These rumors that come out 24 to 48 hours before the draft really do have to be taken seriously. The Shedeur Sanders slide, that came true. The Will Johnson slide because of medical, he fell out of the first round. And then Mike Green had the sexual harassment allegations, and all three of those guys fell out of the first round. So these rumors that come out a day or two before, they usually end up being true. And I still thought like Will Johnson would end up being a first-round pick. He wasn't. So when you start hearing these rumors a day or two before, you got to take them seriously.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, and the conspiracy theory, the casinos and the sports books hate the draft because they lose their tail on them for the most part. Now, I'm sure they did all right this year because of the Sanders fade, but you almost wonder if they are involved in these, and because it helps their bottom line because they lose their tail on in the draft historically.
Yeah, this year there wasn't as many over-unders for certain players. There weren't as quite as many bets. I know going into the second day, there was no over-unders. Last year there was, at least on DraftKings. So there was less bets for the draft. And, speaking of bets, I did hit 3 out of my 4 big ones. So I'm still on a good roll right now.
You're on a heater.
The over 6.5 linemen, under 2.5 quarterbacks, and Emeka Ibuka under 29.5. So I hit 3 out of 4 on the big ones. You'll take that all day. Sports betting, as we know, 75% is, you'll take that every time. So
you'll make a lot of money if you get 75% of your bets.
Yep, that's right. And I did look through some mocks, and I text you that list of 32 players. I got 28 out of 32 for the first round. I didn't quite get to Daniel Jeremiah or Mel Kiper. They still had me beat. But I did.
Kiper had 29. Is that what he had?
29, but I did beat Joel Klatt, Albert Breer, Bucky Brooks, Phil Yates, Nick Wright, Mike Florio, and Bear Felica. I beat all those guys.
You beat the Bear.
Beat the Bear. Bear was actually one of the worst. So I did get 20 out of 32. So not bad. That was better than what I was expecting. I was going to be pretty happy with about 25 or 26. So to get to 28 I was pretty pleased with that.
That's good. Yeah, you do a good job with that. And I do think you've done it for, 25 years or whatever, since you're maybe 22 years. But yeah.
Something like that. I should have I should have threw Will Johnson or Shedeur out of the first round. I just didn't have the guts to do it because one of the players, the first player I took out was Jahad Campbell. He went 31 to the Eagles. He had an injury that some people were wondering if he'd fall the first. So that was the last guy I took out of the first. Wish I wouldn't have done that, but still 28 out of 32, not too bad.
Is there, I think him, the Eagles guy, and then the Chiefs guy, both of those teams were ecstatic at the guys they got. And like you said, if he's healthy, the Eagles got a steal, I think. He's a good player.
Howie Roseman at it again. It doesn't make any sense how he does this. Campbell was a top 10 or 15 player for most teams, but again, he had the injury. Josh Simmons, most people thought was the most talented offensive tackle out of Ohio State. It's a really good get for the Chiefs there at 32. I mean, you'll take that all day long when you're picking at the end of the first round. So the Eagles and Chiefs may have got some steals we could be looking up in a couple of years at those guys being, really good starters in the league.
Yeah, I was listening to some guys today, and they're like, if you go in 3 years or 4 years and relook at this draft, that was the last two picks of the draft, or the first round, but they might end up being top 10, top 5 guys of the first round that actually have an impact on their teams.
Yeah, that's right. And let's one more pick I want to talk about, because we didn't talk about last episode, and I didn't tell you, but it was rumors that were going around, was Colston Loveland over Tyler Warren. I know you weren't happy with that. There were the Bears, obviously, and then the Chargers and the Rams. Those are two other teams that had Loveland rated higher than Warren. And from everybody that I listened to and read, most teams had Loveland and Warren within 1 or 2 spots of each other overall on their draft boards. I mean, some had Warren at 7 and Loveland at 9, or vice versa, but almost all the teams had them both in the top 15. So I think it was closer than what maybe some people realized. It was just something that we didn't talk about last week, though.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to more things and hear people talk, and they're not as disappointed initially. And I think there's some people almost maybe question, like they're almost like Warren might have a higher upside, but Loveland has a higher floor. Like Warren may not make it. I think Loveland's almost like a guaranteed good NFL tight end. Warren could end up being a star, or if it doesn't work out, he could flame out. I think is kind of what I've heard.
Yeah, it just depends, who you ask on that. Loveland's, Harbaugh said when he was at Michigan, he kind of compared him to a Travis Kelce type player.
Yep.
If he ends up being 80% or 90% of Travis Kelce, you're going to be ecstatic with that pick. So again, like we talked about last week, though, the draft grades and all this stuff, you got to give these guys time to play for every single team, every pick. Shedeur Sanders, Colston Loveland, all the way to guys in the 7th round and undrafted free agents. The draft grades are fun, but we're not going to know for sure, at least for a season or two, if not 3 to 5 with these guys.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think the Bears did really well. They addressed needs. This is Ben Johnson's team. They drafted players that they already have, quote unquote, talent in those rooms, but they went and got more talent in those rooms. Either he wants just more of those players on his team, or he's trying to upgrade the talent at his offense positions to make him a better team. And he's not afraid to just draft the guy that he wants, no matter if they have an offensive tackle already that is okay. He's going to try to get a better one to push him or even replace him.
They got Luther Burden in the 2nd round. There's a lot of teams that really like him. Obviously, they've got DJ Moore and Roma Dunze. So I know Ben Johnson came out and said there's no depth chart yet. Some teams do that. Sometimes it's coaches talk, but I think for the Bears, he means that they need an offensive overhaul, and I think they're getting that right now. So we're going to find out with Caleb Williams, I think, pretty early that after this season, you're going to know, or you're at least going to feel pretty comfortable. Either he is a franchise quarterback or he isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of the shows they have all 4 local teams, the Packers, the Bears, the Chiefs, and the Vikings, like insiders or one of their fanatic fan sites or whatever. And the Bears guy was like, this isn't a rebuild anymore. The expectation now is to get to the playoff and get there. They've upgraded enough. They got a new head coach. It's time. We're not on a 3-year build anymore. It's time to flip the switch and win football games.
The Bears roster, in my opinion, there's a lot of talent on it. They brought in 3 new offensive linemen, 4 now with the draft. I think anything less than 9 wins probably going to be disappointing. Now, again, it all depends on how Caleb Williams plays. If they win 9 games and miss the playoffs by a spot, but Caleb Williams looks awesome, that's going to be okay. I think most Bears fans, they want to be in the playoffs, but if Caleb Williams looks like the guy, I think that the record is sort of irrelevant to an extent. It all depends on how Caleb looks. That's really going to be the tell. And then, of course, how did they do situationally? Last year they were terrible. We saw all the different examples throughout the season. So you hope it can't get any worse for the Bears, but they are the Bears still.
Yeah, we're still owned by the McCaskies.
Yeah, so we'll see how it ends up. But they brought in their first 3 picks were for offense, and again, the 3 offensive linemen they brought in free agency and trades that they made. So they're doing everything possible to make sure they're at least going to find out if Caleb's the guy or not.
Yeah, and that's all you can ask for. You got to give him a shot. A new coach with an offensive background, which the problem is it should have been done last year. New coach, new player, new everything. They're a year late, but better late than never, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's right. I know there was 5 Hawkeyes drafted. I think another 5 now that have been signed as undrafted free agents. I know the Cyclones had 4 drafted, and I think another 5 that were signed as undrafted free agents.
Yeah, I would have to count them, but there were several. Yep, there were several that signed. The 4 guys that you thought would get drafted really were. The first 3 were, second and third rounders, just like we thought. And then Travis was a 5th rounder or a 4th rounder. Can't remember for sure.
Jalen Travis was the 4th, the Colts.
Yeah. So, that's 4 players in the top 4 rounds of the draft. That's and people do forget, and I even myself last season was the best season in Cyclone history. They won 11 football games. Before that, they had never won 10. And so having 4 players drafted that high, now obviously they didn't have the high-end talent. They didn't have a Will McDonald. They didn't have, Breece Hall and Jaden Higgins went about the same place right at the top of the second round, but they didn't have the first-round pick. But they had 4 picks relatively early, and again, in positions that you're expected to come in and impact your franchise.
Yeah, it's always a sign that I look at for programs at any level, from the Ohio States down to Iowa State. It's how many players are you putting in the league year in and year out. The more players you have drafted typically means the more wins throughout the college football season. Those kind of go hand in hand. So we've talked about Campbell. He's put a lot more guys into the NFL than any Iowa State coach has. And now I think for Kirk Ferentz, I think with these 10, I think he's at about 230 now, roughly, in the NFL throughout his career. So there's been a bunch. It was a good draft and undrafted free agency for the state of Iowa, for both Iowa and Iowa State.
Yep. And then, just a couple others. Hunter Deckers did sign as well, I believe. And then Cam Miller, the quarterback from North Dakota State, who is from Solon, who, looking back over his career, he probably could have helped the Hawkeyes, being right up the road from Iowa City, but was a national championship quarterback, is going to get a chance as well.
Yeah, you're happy for those guys. They're one of the best parts is the 7th round can be pretty boring, but within about 15 minutes of the draft finishing up, you start getting all the reports of the undrafted free agent signing. There's a lot of folks that say, especially for quarterback specifically, right, you'd rather go undrafted than be selected, mid-6 on, because you can choose where you go. So you can take a look at the rosters throughout the league. If you've got 5 teams calling you, you can take a look at their depth chart and see, okay, well, these 2 teams, I might have a better shot to be the 3rd stringer. Whereas if Cleveland calls you, we know they've already got 5. It's be like, man, that's going to be tough to even make that roster. So you can kind of pick and choose, especially for quarterbacks. About mid-6 on, you almost prefer to go undrafted.
Yep, I 100% agree. Anything else on the draft, Trev?
No, I think that's plenty. Shedeur Sanders took all the talk anyway, so yeah. It was kind of a weird draft this year anyway, and it just turned into the Shedeur Sanders show.
I do think I've heard great reviews on Green Bay. Having it in Green Bay, it was a good time. Everybody really liked it, and the NFL is going to continue to do that to places that can't host a Super Bowl. You got to think of it that way. Green Bay is never going to host a Super Bowl. Chicago, and Green Bay is never going to put a dome on their stadium, as it sits now. The Bears, they've had it in Chicago, they've had it in Kansas City. Unless they put domes up, they're not getting a Super Bowl. I would expect it to go to Buffalo or New England relatively soon because they have not been there, correct?
They go to Pittsburgh next year, and then I think it's open. Yeah, Buffalo will be on a short list just because it's a northern city. As you mentioned, Buffalo's not going to host a Super Bowl. They're going to have an outdoor stadium for their new one. So, yeah, I did see a picture. They were talking about how popular the NFL is, and everybody wants to talk about the ratings of the Super Bowl. They said really what tells you how popular the NFL is 250,000 people standing around in a big lot for hours waiting to hear names that they've never heard, announced by someone on a podium. So that shows you the power of the NFL. It's the draft. I know Mike Foster was laughing. He's like, what are all these people doing, standing around for hours? It's like, well, they're waiting for their team to make a selection. I mean, the funny thing is those people that are right up front, those crazy fans, those fans are paid to be up there. They stand there all day decked out. I mean, the NFL makes sure that those fans up there. But if you looked at Green Bay, it wasn't just day one; it was the second day too. I mean, that big lot that they were at was completely just about packed full of people during the entire time. So the draft really shows you how far and how popular the NFL is ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, 100% agree. I heard that too. That the NFL, the Super Bowl, there's a game to be played and there's a championship to win. That's obvious. Everybody wants to be a part of that. It's standing there for a draft that you only care about one every 32 picks.
Yeah, but for Green Bay, I mean, you got to think about it. Outside of an actual football game, a playoff game, this is probably one of the biggest events they've ever had in Green Bay. So I'm sure all the big corporations up there, the businesses, they probably bring in clients. They have private areas, for drinks and food and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it is heading to Pittsburgh next. I'm sure Pittsburgh will do a really good job. And it was a good site there in Green Bay. I've been up there. I've been to 4 games. I think I've been to Green Bay 7 times throughout my life. And that's just it's a beautiful area. So the Green Bay did a really good job, at least from everything I saw on TV.
Yeah, I've never been there. I mean, obviously I've been to Milwaukee and up to Sheboygan to Whistling Straits, but I never made it all the way up to Green Bay.
Even you as a Bears fan got to get up there. Maybe you got to go up to a Bears-Packers game someday.
Yeah, that would be fun. It probably wouldn't be real fun in the stands because surely they would win. It was fun to watch the draft, though, and kind of the banter back and forth with Clay Matthews talking, saying the Bears still suck from the president or whatever he did to start it. And then the Bears guy came in and said, our quarterback is 1-0 in Lambeau. He's never lost in Lambeau. That is the fun part of the draft. And I think the NFC Central with those, the Bears and the Packers being original teams and just hating each other and having the longest rivalry almost in football. If it isn't, it might even be the longest one in football. That was fun.
Yeah, they do a good job of it, bringing all those celebrities. The first round is typically the commissioner. And then, once you get into round 2 on, they try to make a big deal of it. You see all the folks in different countries. We've talked about how the NFL's wanting to expand. They already own the domestic market here in the States. And their next move, which they've already been doing for quite some time, is expanding globally. So they got super fans and all these other people announcing from different parts of the world, and they're going to continue to do that. And that's why we're seeing even more games outside the United States too.
Yep. All right, let's move on to basketball. There's a big game this weekend in Iowa City. First WNBA game, preseason game on ESPN. ever or for like 10 years. I mean, it's been a while. Caitlin Clark, Indiana Fever versus the Brazilian national team. Can't get a ticket, sold out in 5 minutes, whatever. Price of tickets insane. And the Caitlin Clark season number 2, Caitlin Clark watch, and Caitlin Clark Morgan You Asked For podcast summer will begin on Sunday.
Yeah, well, I looked at some of the apps. You can buy a single ticket to get in for about $180 plus fees, whatever that's going to be. And then I looked, they played I think they played the night before in the preseason game as well too, or maybe it's 2 days before in Indianapolis, and tickets to get in for that were like $5 to $8 compared to $180. So that just goes to show you it's going to be a big time event.
I've heard some driving to Indianapolis and watch the game. It'd be cheaper.
Yeah, it should be a special event though. It's pretty cool that they're doing that at Carver Hawk. I would have to think that they're almost going to make this a yearly tradition. It's not that far from Indianapolis. Obviously, it's going to be sold out. The TV networks are going to be there. So I would think as long as everything goes smoothly, I could see them coming back every single year for a preseason game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't, or come to Des Moines, or go to Cedar Rapids in their arena, whatever. Quad Cities, one of the Iowa cities, to get her back to home as quickly and as close as you can.
I got you. You're still on. Okay. Yeah, if they could come to Des Moines. I mean, they could go. Des Moines would be good too. That'd be a centralized location. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. They've got a brand new team. I think they only returned 5 starters or 5 players from the actual roster last year. So a bunch of new players. Stephanie White, the head coach, said this is the most talented team she's ever been a part of, which is saying a lot. The expectations are to get to the championship. We'll see if they can do it. They are going to be one of the best teams. I mean, should probably be the highest scoring team in the WNBA. It might take them, a little bit of time to gel together with all the new faces, but I don't think they're going to start out as bad as they did in the first 12 games last year. They may start out 6-5 or something like that, but that's going to be a night and day difference from the first 10 or 12 games last season.
Is the schedule as hard, or is it just as hard and trying to capitalize on Caitlin Clark, but they have a way better team so they can handle it so much better?
Well, they don't have 11 games in 20 days,
right,
like they did last year, and they've got a way better team. Dewana Bonner, Natasha Howard, and Sophie Cunningham, those 3 specifically. So they're really 7 or 8 deep. Last year, I think they were only about 4. 4 legit players. This year, they've got 7 or 8. So it's going to be a totally new look. They're going to play at a really fast pace. Some of those, Dewana Bonner came in and said, yeah, this is the fastest team she's ever been a part of. So they're going to play a lot like the Iowa style, I would assume, but they're going to have some really good defensive players too. And as I told you, they've got enforcers now this year. So that silliness that we saw with Caitlin Clark getting, pushed down on the court and no one coming to help her, that's not going to fly this season.
Yeah, that's what I'm interested to see, is how much different this team supports Caitlin Clark from the top down. It was, what the coach's name was, Sides or whatever. She didn't know what to do with Caitlin Clark on down the roster. As you've said, and as I'm preparing, this coach will stand up for her, and the players won't take any crap from anybody for Caitlin Clark, because they know this is their chance too, to win and to be on TV. And hey, you put yourself with Caitlin Clark, and you might get in a State Farm commercial with her. Well, guess what? You get a little money for that. These girls and women aren't dumb. I would try to attach my career, and if she wants to take me along for the ride, go do it. It'll help you.
Yeah, I told you, I think the Fever are going to be involved in a lot of fights this season. I don't think this whole thing that we saw last year is over between the pettiness, which, it makes for good entertainment. That's sports in general, kind of, but it should be entertaining. And you're right. A lot of the new players that are on the team have all spoken about Indianapolis is crazy. They can't go out without getting stopped, on the sidewalks or at the store or whatever. They said totally different than from the other cities that they're from. So Indiana's got the full support. Most of all their games are going to be on national TV. And yeah, I think their first game their first regular season game, I think, is May 16th. I believe it is. So we're not too far away. And you're right. I mean, outside of baseball, which I'm not a huge baseball guy, I know you are more than I am, but we'll be talking a lot of Fever this summer.
Yep, the Caitlin Clark episodes have begun. And then the last thing, we're going to stay in Indiana. The Indiana Pacers last night beat the Milwaukee Bucks. Tyrese Halliburton, former Cyclone, Wisconsin native, so probably I would assume grew up a Bucks fan. I don't know that, but I would assume so. And probably cheered for Giannis when he was younger. Beats Giannis on a drive, hits a last-second layup, about 1.2 seconds left, and the desperation shot does not go in, and they beat the Bucks to win the series. It was a 4-5, so it wasn't a huge upset, but knocking Giannis might have been his last game in Milwaukee. But that isn't the talk. The talk is Halliburton's dad, who is awesome. Everything I've heard from Iowa State, the year he was at Iowa State and hurt and never played, his dad still went to every game, supported the team, even though Tyrese was hurt and not playing. It was a horrible team. I think that was the year they went 0-19 in the Big 12. But he runs on the court or gets on the court, however you want to say it, and gets in Giannis's face. And the first time you see the video, you almost wonder if Giannis didn't start it. Like, he said something, and you're like, well, why is Halliburton's dad there doing it? So Giannis must have started it. But the way Giannis talked about it in the press conference, and then the way Tyrese handled it, Tyrese's dad was at fault. Everybody says he's at fault. Tyrese said he was at fault. He apologized. And I'm going to have a guess that next round, the next game, Halliburton's dad's not going to be anywhere near court, and his seats are going to be up in sections 2 that will start with a 2 or maybe even a 3.
It's been a bad couple of weeks for dads of famous athletes. I'll say that. Yep. Halliburton's dad. You just can't do that after the game. Obviously, some parents come on the court, especially people that are sitting up close. But typically, you're not getting in the face of other players. And I thought Giannis handled it well. Some people were saying Giannis may not even knew that was Halliburton's dad at first.
Right.
He may have thought this is some random fan coming up and talking to me. And my theory is, my opinion, if you're an athlete and some random person steps onto the field or court, they're free game. You walk Absolutely. Up to me and you put your hands on me. I mean, whatever happens. That's a little bit different. So yeah, a bad moment by Halliburton's dad there. You got to use better judgment. Yeah, I don't think he'll be allowed to sit close moving forward. And I wouldn't even be surprised if maybe they don't let him attend the games for the rest of the playoffs. We'll see what the NBA does, but the NBA they don't want to malice in the palace again or anything like that. They're trying to avoid that. So just a bad moment for Halliburton's dad, but Halliburton was voted the most overrated player by the players or whatever that poll was. And then he goes and has that game-winning shot there. So it was a good moment for him. And the Pacers are fun to watch. The Fever players are all at their games. And then vice versa. We saw the Pacer players at the Fever games last season too. So that whole community kind of supports each other. And it's fun to see. The Pacers are a little bit fun to watch, and it is good that they move on. But yeah, it was a bad moment by Halliburton's dad there.
Yeah, you see, and again, the problem with the internet anymore is you don't know it's AI or fake, but there has been pictures of McCaffrey and Caitlin Clark and Halliburton and his girlfriend all together going out to eat, going on double dates or going to different things. They're two of the more popular people, in Indianapolis with their sports teams. And so it makes sense that they hang out. They understand when they go out, they can't just do anything they want. So they need they want to go to those same type of places that can give you a little bit of privacy when you want it. And obviously they can get to anything and do everything because of who they are and the money they have. And it is good to see Hawkeyes and Cyclones hanging out together without just being absolute crazy and everything else like that. Because game respects game, and both of them are the best players on their teams. And Caitlin, obviously, probably one of the handful of best players in her league overall. Halliburton is not there yet, but he is on his way to being a perennial all-star in the NBA.
Yeah, a lot of the folks I listen to, they love watching Halliburton, more diehard NBA fans. So he's making a name for himself, and that's exactly how you do it, a moment like that. Now, it's a little disappointing that at the aftermath, but still take that out of it. It was a great moment for him.
Yep, absolutely. Anything else, Trev, you want to talk about? We're approaching an hour here. We can go a little bit shorter here tonight. We got started a few minutes late with some computer difficulties, but
no, that's probably plenty for tonight. Next week I'll be out, so you have to get Zach or Tassel or get somebody else on here. I got a show I've got to be at, so I won't be on next week. But yeah, it's the draft was definitely entertaining. It was a different draft than anyone I've watched. Like I said, with the Shador show taking over, it's been a bad few weeks. Like I said, for dads out there, sports dads, getting in the way of their kids or giving their kids bad advice. So it's definitely been interesting. And yeah, now we're going into Caitlin Clark and Indiana Fever time.
Yep, and that is always fun. And like you said, so we're just over 2 weeks away from our first regular season game. And for all people in Iowa and fans of Iowans, that's what I am. Like, I remember when I collected baseball cards, my neighbor was a big card collector too. And he made a point, one of his things on how he collected cards was people with Iowa ties. Like, they were born in Iowa or went to Iowa. Like, that was when Iowa State, you and I all had baseball teams. Maybe they went to one of those schools or some connection to Iowa. And then when we go to card shops or card shows, we try to find those cards. And they weren't necessarily always the best cards. I mean, they'd be cheap to get, but it just made it – that's what you collected. It wasn't necessarily always trying to get the most expensive card, but you had the Iowa card collection, and that was always fun. And that's – as Iowans, we do always try to point out the connections to Iowa.
Iowa doesn't have any, professional teams, so this is what we've got: the basketball and the players, athletes that are from the state or play at the colleges in Iowa. So yeah, there's ties, and it is pretty cool that both Halliburton and Caitlin Clark are both in Indianapolis, and they seem like those two and Pat McAfee, the three biggest stars of Indianapolis.
Yeah, and they're both from the Midwest. Obviously Caitlin Clark from Des Moines, and Halliburton is from Oshkosh, so they're Midwest people still living in a Midwest town. So Midwest values for all of them there. And that's what we all like to see as Iowans and sports fans.
Nope, that's right. I'm looking forward to the Fever season getting started, and we'll see how they do out of the gate this year compared to last.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Trev. And we'll talk a couple weeks. I mean, obviously we'll talk more than that, but we'll talk a couple weeks here on the podcast. Thanks for all your work on the NFL draft. And we'll talk in a couple weeks here on Morgan You Asked For podcast. Trevor Voss, I'm Ryan Morgan. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk next week.
Have a good one.